The world tilted sideways in slow motion, headlights spiraling like fallen stars, the sickening crunch of metal against concrete, then silence. The black SUV hung suspended for one impossible heartbeat before gravity claimed it, pulling it down into the black water below. Lena Walker has perfected the art of invisibility. At 26, she's just another face in the gig economy, delivering Korean fried chicken at 2 a.m., dropping off bubble tea to teenagers, keeping her head down and her questions to herself. It's not the life she imagined when she came to America 7 years ago, but it's safe. It pays her brother Danny's community college tuition. It keeps immigration officers from looking too closely at paperwork that doesn't quite add up. But safety is an illusion that shatters the moment she parks her scooter on the bridge and sees a man drowning in a sinking car, his wrists bound to the wheel with industrial zip ties. The decision to jump doesn't feel like a choice, it feels like the first honest thing she's done in years. She doesn't know that the man she's about to save will drag her into a war she never knew was being fought, or that the city's most dangerous people will soon learn her name. Lena's arms burned as she dragged the man onto the concrete pier, his weight threatening to pull them both back into the black water. She rolled him onto his back and pressed her palms against his chest, counting compressions the way she'd learned in a mandatory training video she'd barely paid attention to. Water poured from his mouth. His lips were blue in the sodium light of the street lamps above. Come on, she muttered, tilting his head back and breathing into his mouth. His chest rose and fell with her breath, not his own. She compressed again, harder this time, feeling a rib shift beneath her hands. He convulsed suddenly, choking up harbor water in violent heaves. Lena turned him on his side as he vomited, her own breath coming in ragged gasps. She was soaked through, shivering so hard her teeth chattered. His eyes opened, dark, alert, completely focused despite nearly drowning moments before. He grabbed her wrist with surprising strength, his gaze scanning her face with an intensity that made her freeze. Who sent you? His voice was rough, barely above a whisper, but there was steel underneath. What? Nobody, I saw the crash. Who are you working for? His grip tightened. Whose orders? I'm a delivery driver. I saw you go into the water and Lena tried to pull away, but his fingers were like iron around her wrist. She could see the zip tie marks cutting red lines into his skin, the raw wounds where he'd been bound. You were tied to the wheel. Someone tried to kill you. Something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe, or reassessment. His grip loosened slightly. You need to leave. Now. You need a hospital. No hospitals. He pushed himself up to sitting, wincing. Blood seeped through his white shirt from somewhere beneath. No police. You were never here. You're hurt. I said go. The command in his voice was absolute, the tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Lena scrambled backward, her survival instincts finally catching up to her adrenaline. There was something wrong about him, not just the attempted murder, but the way he moved, the authority in his voice despite being half-drowned and bleeding. This wasn't a random carjacking gone wrong. This was something darker. She ran. Her scooter was still parked on the bridge where she'd abandoned it, the delivery bag still bungeed to the back rack. Her hands shook so badly she could barely get the key in the ignition. She didn't look back as she drove home through empty streets, the engine whining beneath her. At her apartment, she stripped off her soaking clothes and stood under a hot shower until the shaking stopped. Just a bizarre accident. A random act of violence in a violent city. She'd saved someone's life, and that was the end of it. She'd never see him again. She repeated this to herself as she climbed into bed, as she closed her eyes, as she tried to convince her racing heart to slow down. At 4 a.m., 3 sharp knocks shattered her fragile sleep. Lena sat up in darkness, every muscle tensed. The knocking came again, patient, unhurried, inevitable. She knew, even before she looked through the peephole, that her invisible life had just ended. 3 men stood in the hallway outside her door, and everything about them was wrong for this building. Their suits were tailored and expensive, their posture military straight. The one in front, older, with silver threading through his black hair, smiled politely when he saw her eye at the peephole. "Ms. Walker. We need you to come with us, please." Lena's hand was already on her phone. "I'm calling the police." "That would be unwise." His voice remained pleasant. "We're here on behalf of Kong Junesio. The man you saved tonight. He'd like to thank you personally." "I don't want thanks. I want you to leave. We know about your brother, Danny. Second year at Metro Community College, majoring in computer science. He has Professor Chen's class at 9 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Takes the number 7 bus from the apartment on Maple Street." Ice flooded Lena's veins. "Don't you dare. We're not threatening you, Ms. Walker. We're explaining the situation. You saved our employer's life tonight, which puts you in a very specific category of problem. You're not in trouble. But you do need to come with us." 20 minutes later, Lena sat in the back of a black sedan with leather seats that probably cost more than her yearly rent, watching the city transform as they drove into neighborhoods she'd only ever delivered to. The buildings grew taller, cleaner, more expensive. They pulled into an underground garage beneath a glass tower and took a private elevator that required a keycard to operate. The penthouse was all windows and minimalist furniture, the kind of space that appeared in magazines about people whose problems Lena couldn't fathom. A dozen people moved through it with quiet efficiency, some on phones, others studying tablets, all of them deferring to a woman in a sharp blazer who directed traffic with minimal gestures. And there, sitting in a chair by the window with his torso wrapped in clean bandages, was the man from the river. He looked different in the light, younger than she'd thought, maybe early 30s, with sharp features and exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. He was watching her with that same intense focus from the pier, but now she could see the intelligence behind it, the constant calculation. "Ms. Walker. Thank you for coming." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please sit." Did I have a choice? No. At least he was honest. "But I want you to understand why. Someone in my organization tried to kill me tonight. They went to considerable effort, studied my routines, compromised my security, planned it perfectly. And then you appeared and ruined everything. Sorry for saving your life." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "Don't be. But you need to understand what that means. You saw my face. You saw the zip ties, you know it was attempted murder, not an accident. You're a witness to a crime I can't report and a conspiracy I don't fully understand yet." He leaned forward slightly, wincing at the movement. "Which makes you a liability to whoever tried to kill me." The woman in the blazer approached and handed him a tablet. He turned it toward Lena. On the screen, Danny walked across campus, backpack slung over one shoulder, completely unaware of the man in a gray jacket following 15 feet behind, matching his pace perfectly. "That photo was taken 3 hours ago," Junesio said quietly. "My people have been watching your brother since we identified you. Not to threaten him, to protect him. Because whoever tried to kill me will figure out who saved me, and when they do, they'll come for you. And they'll use whatever leverage they can find." Lena stared at the image, her hands clenched so tight her nails cut crescents into her palms. "I'm not threatening you," Junesio continued. "I'm protecting you. Because right now, saving my life has made you one of the most dangerous liabilities in this city. And the only way to keep you and your brother safe is to bring you inside until I find out who wants me dead." "Inside what, exactly?" "My world," he said simply. "I'm sorry. But there's no going back now." The safe house was nothing like Junesio's penthouse. It was a minimalist apartment on the 20th floor of a building in a neighborhood Lena had delivered to countless times without ever imagining what existed behind its plain facade. 2 guards stood outside her door at all times, changing shifts with military precision. They were polite, mostly silent, and absolutely immovable. June SEO visited daily, usually in the evening, always looking more tired than the day before. The first few visits were strained, Lena oscillating between anger at her imprisonment and reluctant gratitude that Danny remained safe and unaware. But gradually, as June SEO's injuries healed and the immediate crisis stretched into a more permanent tension, they began to talk. He explained it piece by piece, the architecture of the world he occupied. The restaurants and karaoke bars and import businesses that formed the visible surface. The protection networks and loan operations and information brokerage that ran underneath. The territory lines that carved the city into sections controlled by different powers, his organization holding Koreatown and the Eastern Industrial District, the Chinese Triad controlling the port and Chinatown, smaller operations filling the gaps between. I inherited this from my father, he said one evening, standing at the window and looking out over the city lights. Built on his father's work before that. It used to be simpler, clear rules, clear territories. But the world's changing. The old ways don't work anymore. So you're trying to go legitimate? I'm trying to stop the bleeding. He turned to face her. Every week, someone gets hurt, usually someone who has nothing to do with any of this. Shop owners caught in the crossfire. Families extorted beyond what they can pay. I've been negotiating with Lu Wei, the head of the Triad, trying to establish a real peace treaty. Reduce the violence, regulate the operations we can't eliminate, transition into legitimate business over time. That's why someone tried to kill you. Lena understood suddenly. The peace treaty. There are people in my organization who profit from the current system. They see legitimacy as weakness. And there are people in Lu Wei's organization who feel the same way. My death could have sparked a war that would have destroyed the treaty before it was ever signed. His jaw tightened. An internal purge made to look like an enemy attack. Lena watched him as he spoke, noticing things she hadn't in their first meetings. The way his shoulders never fully relaxed. The habit he had of checking his phone every few minutes, responding to an endless stream of messages and demands. The exhaustion that went deeper than physical injury. Do you ever sleep? She asked. The question seemed to surprise him. Not much lately. You can't protect everyone if you collapse from exhaustion. Something softened in his expression. Spoken like someone who works multiple shifts to support a college student. That's different. Is it? He moved away from the window. You make yourself invisible, work yourself to exhaustion, sacrifice everything for someone you love. I do the same, just with different tools and higher stakes. Before Lena could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor shifted, the brief vulnerability vanishing behind professional focus. I need to take this. After he left, Lena stood at the window he'd been looking through, seeing the city spread out below. Somewhere down there, Danny was probably studying, safe because of guards he didn't know existed. Safe because the man who just left her apartment had positioned protection without being asked, without expecting gratitude, simply because it was necessary. She was beginning to understand that Kong Jun SEO wasn't the monster she'd expected. Which somehow made everything more complicated. The explosion came without warning, a percussion that rattled the windows and threw Lena to the floor before her mind processed what was happening. She scrambled to her feet as gunfire erupted, the sharp cracks impossibly loud in a confined space. The two guards who'd been outside her door burst in, weapons drawn, and positioned themselves between her and the entrance. Stay down, one shouted, but the words were drowned by another explosion, closer this time. The windows facing the street shattered inward, glass spraying across the room in a glittering wave. Masked figures in tactical gear rappelled through the broken windows with professional efficiency. The first guard went down in a burst of gunfire. The second managed to kill one attacker before taking a round to the shoulder. Lena pressed herself against the wall, her ears ringing, unable to process the violence erupting in what had been her prison and sanctuary. Then Jun SEO was there, materializing from the hallway with a gun in each hand. The man Lena had seen exhausted and thoughtful vanished, replaced by something colder and infinitely more dangerous. He moved with brutal precision, 2 shots that dropped the attacker nearest the window, a smooth pivot that put 3 rounds into another figure emerging from the hallway. No hesitation, no wasted motion. 2 more attackers came through the door. Jun Seo killed the first before he'd fully entered, but the second got close enough to grapple. They went down together, and Lena watched in horror as Jun Seo broke the man's arm, reversed the struggle, and put a bullet through his skull at point-blank range. The surviving guard was shouting into his radio, calling for backup. More of Jun Seo's people were flooding into the building, but so were more attackers. This wasn't a simple hit, it was a coordinated assault. Service exit, Jun Seo barked, grabbing Lena's arm and pulling her toward the back of the apartment. They moved through smoke and chaos, bodies and blood marking their path. The guard covered their retreat until a burst of automatic fire cut him down. The stairwell was a concrete shaft painted institutional gray, and they took the stairs 3 at a time. Behind them, boots thundered as someone gave chase. They made it to the 12th floor before an attacker rounded the landing above them, weapon raised. Jun Seo pushed Lena behind him, but the man was too close, already firing. She saw Jun Seo twist, felt the heat of bullets passing close enough to stir her hair. The attacker's weapon clicked empty. It was over in seconds. Jun Seo closed the distance before the man could reload, caught his throat in both hands, and twisted with terrible finality. The crack echoed in the stairwell. The body crumpled. Jun Seo turned to face her, breathing hard, blood spattering his face and clothes. His eyes met hers, dark, haunted, unflinching. "This is who I am," he said quietly. "I'm sorry you had to see it." They fled through the service exit into an alley where a nondescript sedan was already waiting, engine running. As they sped away from the building, Lena looked back to see smoke pouring from the windows of what had been her safe house, emergency vehicles already converging. They drove in silence to an abandoned textile factory on the waterfront, its windows dark and its machinery silent. Jun Seo's people would regroup here, away from obvious locations. They climbed stairs to a second-floor office that still had some furniture, and Jun Seo finally stopped moving, leaning against the desk and closing his eyes. "You could have run," he said. "In the stairwell, when I was fighting. You could have kept going down and disappeared into the city." "I know," Lena said. "Why didn't you?" She didn't have a good answer. Or maybe she did, and it terrified her more than the violence she'd just witnessed. Because watching him fight, watching the exhaustion and determination and terrible skill, she'd realized something. He was in more danger than she was. The man trying to make peace, trying to transition away from violence, was drowning in it anyway. And somehow, impossibly, she'd started to care what happened to him. "I don't know," she lied. "I guess I'm not as smart as I thought." In the darkness of the abandoned factory, surrounded by the ghosts of industry long dead, Lena finally understood there was no going back. Not to her invisible life, not to safety, not to ignorance. She was in this now, whether she wanted to be or not. Dawn came slowly to the waterfront, gray light filtering through grimy windows to illuminate the rusted machinery and dusty floors of the abandoned factory. Lena had dozed fitfully in an office chair while Jun Seo made calls, coordinated with his people, and rebuilt his shattered security infrastructure in real time. Now, as weak sunlight touched his face, she could see how much the night had cost him. He set down his phone and looked at her with bloodshot eyes. "We need to talk about your future. My future is locked in a room somewhere waiting for you to catch whoever wants you dead." "No." He moved to sit on the desk in front of her, their positions reversed from just hours ago. "Your future is whatever you want it to be. I can give you a new identity, you and Danny both. New names, new documents, money to start over somewhere far from here. My people are good at making people disappear. You'd be free." It was exactly what she should want. Everything she'd dreamed about when the guards first showed up at her door. A chance to take Danny and run, to find somewhere safe where men didn't rappel through windows with automatic weapons. "What about you?" she asked instead. I'll handle this. It's not your problem. That attack was aimed at killing you through me. They knew where I was. Which means your safe houses aren't safe, your security is compromised, and you don't know who to trust. Lena stood up, restless energy finally breaking through her exhaustion. How many people knew where I was? Fewer than a dozen. So the traitor is in your inner circle. Someone close enough to know your movements, your plans, your safe locations. She paced between the rusting looms, thinking aloud. You can't investigate your own people, they'll see you coming. Your enforcers are too obvious, too recognizable. You need someone invisible. June SEO was watching her with that intense focus she was beginning to recognize. What are you suggesting? Let me help. The words came out before she fully thought them through, but once spoken, she realized she meant them. I'm a delivery driver. I'm invisible. I go everywhere, see everything, and nobody notices me. I can ask questions, observe patterns, investigate places your people can't get near without raising alarms. Absolutely not. Why? Because it's dangerous? I think we're past that. Because I'm not qualified. I've been navigating this city's underbelly for 7 years. I know which restaurants are fronts, which businesses run cash under the table, which corners belong to which operations. I just never paid attention before because staying invisible meant staying safe. She stopped pacing and faced him directly. I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of being saved, protected, hidden away. I want to do something that matters. You don't know what you're asking. I know exactly what I'm asking. I'm asking to stop being a victim and start being useful. Her voice hardened. That attack last night, how many people died? 4 of my people. Probably more attackers. And if they come again? If this conspiracy succeeds? How many more people die in the war that follows? June SEO stood and walked to the window, his back to her. You saved my life once. That doesn't make you responsible for saving it again, or for fixing the problems I created by trying to change things. Maybe I'm not doing this for you. Maybe I'm doing it for Danny, so he can live in a city where people don't get killed over territory lines and protection rackets. Maybe I'm doing it for myself, because I'm tired of delivering food while pretending I don't see what's really happening. She moved closer. You said I can't go back. You're right. But I can go forward. And forward means helping you end this before more people get hurt. He turned to face her, and she could see the conflict in his expression, the desire to protect her warring with the desperate need for someone he could trust. Finally, he nodded slowly. If we do this, you follow every protocol exactly. You wear a wire at all times. You never take risks, never deviate from the plan. The moment I think you're in danger, you're pulled out whether you like it or not. Deal. And if Danny finds out? He won't. I'm good at keeping secrets. June SEO extended his hand, and Lena took it. His grip was firm, warm, entirely human despite everything he'd done. Welcome to a world you should never have seen, he said quietly. Too late for that, Lena replied. Now let's find who tried to kill you. Returning to her delivery routes felt surreal, like stepping into a past life that no longer fit quite right. The same restaurants, the same apartment buildings, the same convenience stores, but now Lena saw them differently. Every interaction was potential intelligence. Every conversation carried weight. The wire taped beneath her shirt was so small she could barely feel it, but she was hyper-aware of its presence. Somewhere, June SEO's people were listening, recording, analyzing every word. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like armor. She'd been delivering for 3 days when she noticed the pattern at Prosperity Dumpling House. Mr. Huang ran a modest operation, 8 tables, faded wallpaper, the kind of place that survived on regulars and cheap lunch specials. Lena had been delivering from there for years, always greeted by the same tired smile, the same jokes about the weather. He seemed like every other small business owner in Koreatown, working too hard for too little reward. Except his car was a brand new Mercedes that he parked 2 blocks away. And his watch was Patek Philippe, briefly visible when he rolled up his sleeves to cook. And there were meetings, always late at night after closing, with men who moved like Jun Seo's guards, who scanned the street before entering, who never ordered food. Lena started taking deliveries from Prosperity Dumpling House every chance she got. She memorized the faces of Mr. Huang's visitors, noted the times they arrived, observed the body language of their interactions. She played her role perfectly, the friendly, slightly scattered delivery girl who chatted about traffic and weather and never asked difficult questions. On the 5th day, she saw him. Min Tae-young walked into Prosperity Dumpling House at 11 p.m., after the restaurant had officially closed. Lena was across the street, sitting on her scooter and pretending to check her phone while her wire captured everything. She'd seen Min's photograph in the briefing materials, Jun Seo's second-in-command, his childhood friend, one of fewer than 10 people who'd known the location of the safe house. He stayed for 40 minutes. When he emerged, Mr. Huang walked him to the door with the deference of a subordinate to a superior. "Got him," Lena murmured, knowing the wire would pick it up. Min Tae-young just left Prosperity Dumpling House. "Looks like Mr. Huang answers to him." That night, in a different safe house with better security, Jun Seo's intelligence analysts pulled apart Prosperity Dumpling House's records. The business was barely breaking even on paper, but Mr. Huang owned 3 properties and maintained accounts in 2 countries. The money had to be coming from somewhere. "He's a cutout," explained Ji Woo, one of Jun Seo's security specialists. "Someone Min uses to communicate without direct exposure. And if Min's using cutouts, he's planning something he doesn't want traced back to him." Over the next week, Lena documented 2 more visits from Min, and 3 from men she didn't recognize but whose license plates tracked back to registered businesses in neutral territory. The intelligence picture was expanding, but so was Lena's understanding of the community around her. She saw the restaurant owners who paid protection money with resigned exhaustion. The families caught between competing powers, trying to survive without taking sides. The quiet desperation underlying everything, the way people lowered their voices when certain names were mentioned, the way they avoided certain streets at certain times. This was what Jun Seo was trying to protect. Not power or territory, but these ordinary people trying to live ordinary lives in the cracks between violence. "Min's setting something up," Jun Seo said during one evening debrief. "Something big enough to require outside coordination. We need to know what before he moves." "Then I'll find out," Lena replied. She didn't say that she'd started to understand what drove him, the impossible weight of responsibility for all these lives, the exhaustion of trying to do right in a system built on wrong. She didn't say that somewhere in the past 2 weeks, this had stopped being about survival and started being about something she couldn't quite name. She just went back to her routes, invisible and essential, watching everything while pretending to see nothing. The dockside warehouse sat on neutral ground, technically outside both Jun Seo's territory and the Triads, a strip of industrial waterfront that belonged to neither faction by long-standing agreement. It was the perfect location for a confrontation that couldn't escalate without violating protocols both sides respected. Which should have been Lena's first warning. She sat in the surveillance van 3 blocks away, watching the feeds from the cameras Jun Seo's people had planted around the perimeter. He'd gone in with 4 guards, Min Tae-young already inside waiting. The meeting was supposed to be straightforward. Present the evidence of Min's outside contacts, demand an explanation, resolve this internally before it became a crisis. "This feels wrong," Lena said into her headset. "Too easy. Too contained." "Agreed," came Ji Woo's voice from the driver's seat. "But we've checked everything. The building's empty except for our people and Min's." On screen, Jun Seo entered the warehouse's main floor. The space was vast, high ceilings supported by metal columns, old shipping containers stacked along the walls. Min stood in the center, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Their voices came through tinny but clear. Min denying the evidence, Jun Seo laying out the connections methodically, no accusation yet but the shape of betrayal forming in the air between them. Then the shipping containers opened. Men poured out, dozens of them, armed and moving with coordinated precision. Not Jun Seo's people. On the screens, Lena watched the north entrance explode inward as another group stormed through. Triad soldiers, their tattoos visible even on the grainy footage. "It's an ambush," she shouted, but Ji-woo was already on the radio, calling for backup, trying to reach Jun Seo's guards. The channel was dead, jammed. On screen, Jun Seo and his people were trapped in a crossfire, taking cover behind machinery as bullets sparked off metal. Min had disappeared into the chaos. This wasn't a confrontation, it was an execution disguised as a gang war, designed to kill Jun Seo while making it look like the Triad had violated the peace. "We have to get him out," Lena said. "Backup is 10 minutes out. We hold position Anne." Lena was already opening the van door. "They don't have 10 minutes. She ran before Ji-woo could stop her, sprinting toward the warehouse through alleys she'd delivered through 100 times. Her small size and delivery uniform let her slip past the perimeter guards, just another civilian fleeing the violence, not worth stopping. Inside, the warehouse was a war zone. She pressed herself against the wall and moved through the smoke and chaos, using the stacked containers for cover. Bullets whined overhead. Someone was screaming. The acrid smell of gunpowder choked the air. She found Jun Seo pinned behind an industrial press, bleeding from a grazing wound on his shoulder, his remaining guard unconscious beside him. The radio jammer had to be close, a bulky unit that would be emitting a signal strong enough to block communications. "The north exit," she gasped, sliding into cover beside him. 20 meters to your left, through the small door. There's an alley system that connects to the street 3 blocks over. Your backup is coming from the south, if you move now, you can link up. What the hell are you doing here?" Jun Seo's face was a mask of fury and fear. "Saving your life. Again. You're welcome." He grabbed her arm, about to order her back, when a hand clamped around Lena's jacket and yanked her backward. She went down hard, her vision exploding in stars as her head cracked against concrete. Min Tae-young stood over her, gun pointed at her chest. "I was hoping you'd do something stupid." He dragged her to the center of the warehouse floor, where another man waited. Lena had seen him before, Mr. Huang from Prosperity Dumpling House. Except his posture was different now, his expression harder. This wasn't a restaurant owner. This was someone who commanded the armed men around them. "Kong Jun Seo," Min called out. "Come out, or she dies." The gunfire had stopped, both sides holding position in a tense standoff. Slowly, Jun Seo emerged from cover, hands visible, weapon lowered but not dropped. "Lu Chen," he said, looking at Mr. Huang. "I should have recognized you." "You were meant to," Lu Chen replied. His Korean was perfect, without accent. "I've been in your territory for 8 months, watching, learning, waiting. Min came to me 6 months ago with a proposal. Kill you, blame the Triad, start a war that destroys the peace treaty before it can be signed. Both our organizations have factions that profit from conflict. Why not give them what they want? And when the city turns into a battlefield?" Jun Seo's voice was steady despite the guns pointed at him from every direction. "When the police crack down on everyone? When legitimate businesses flee and the community is destroyed? We rebuild with who's left," Min said. "The old ways, without your weakness pretending to be vision." Lu Chen pressed his gun against Lena's temple. "Drop your weapon, Kong. Or I execute her while you watch, and then we kill you anyway." Lena felt the cold metal against her skin and thought about Danny, about the life she'd never quite lived, about all the things she'd stayed invisible to avoid. And then she thought about the phone in her pocket, the emergency function June SEO had insisted she memorize but never use unless there was absolutely no other option. She met June SEO's eyes and saw him making the same calculation she was. Sometimes the only way out was through. Her fingers found her phone. June SEO's weapon clattered to the concrete floor, and for a moment, Lena thought she'd miscalculated. That he'd actually surrender, that this would end with both of them executed in a warehouse while Min and Lu Chen walked away to start their war. Then her phone chimed, the specific tone that indicated the emergency broadcast had activated. Every major news outlet in the city, every police scanner, every emergency service channel was now receiving a live stream from her phone, video and audio of everything happening in this warehouse. Lu Chen's expression shifted from triumph to confusion to rage in the span of a heartbeat. What did you? She just made you famous, June SEO said calmly. Every news station in the city is watching this right now. Every cop is on their way. You can't kill either of us without becoming the most wanted men in the state. Min lunged for Lena's phone, but she'd already thrown it, a wild toss that sent it skittering across the concrete floor toward the stacked containers, camera still broadcasting everything. You're insane. Min snarled. You've exposed everything, both organizations, all the operations. I've exposed a triad underboss and a traitor attempting to murder me and start a gang war, June SEO corrected. The footage shows you admitting to the conspiracy. Lu Chen standing in my territory with armed soldiers. An attempted execution of a civilian delivery driver who happened to be in the wrong place. He looked at Lu Chen. Your boss is going to be very unhappy. This level of police attention will shut down operations citywide for months. Then we kill you both and disappear before. Before what? June SEO interrupted. Before the tactical units arrive. Before this becomes national news. You're already too late. The moment you pull that trigger, you make me a martyr. My organization won't negotiate, they'll burn your territory to ash in retaliation. Lu Wei will have to denounce you publicly and probably hand you over just to restore operations. You've lost. Lu Chen's hand was steady, but Lena could see the calculation in his eyes. The math had changed. Killing them now wouldn't salvage the situation, it would make everything worse. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. We can still fight our way out, one of Lu Chen's soldiers said. And guarantee that every cop in the city makes this their personal mission. Lu Chen lowered his gun slowly. No. We cut losses. What? Min's voice rose. We're this close. We're finished. Lu Chen's tone was final. He looked at June SEO. Your move. I have a better idea. Lena's voice was hoarse, her throat tight with adrenaline, but she forced the words out anyway. Neither of you can kill each other now without massive consequences. But you can't just walk away either, there are too many witnesses, too much evidence. So you need a third option. And what would that be? Lu Chen's expression was skeptical but curious. Me. Lena stood straighter, ignoring the gun still pointed in her general direction. I'm nobody. No allegiance to any faction, no skin in this game except by accident. Which means I'm the only person both your organizations might actually trust to deliver a message. What message? That Min Tae-young was working alone, manipulating both sides. That someone in your organization, she looked at Lu Chen, and someone in June SEO's organization conspired to start a war that neither of your actual leaders wanted. You can frame this as rogue operators being exposed, not organizational conflict. Min started to protest, but Lu Chen's people had already grabbed him. There was a brief struggle, a gunshot that echoed through the warehouse, and Min Tae-young crumpled to the floor. No loose ends. You were saying. Lu Chen prompted. Lena forced herself not to look at the body. I can take proof of the conspiracy to Lu Wei. Show him how his underboss went rogue, tried to start a war for personal profit. June SEO does the same with his people, publicly exposes and condemns the conspiracy. You both lose people, but you also both maintain control and can claim you stopped a disaster. The peace treaty becomes even more important as proof that leadership on both sides wants stability. The sirens were very close now. And if Lu Wei doesn't believe you? Lu Chen asked. Then I'm just a delivery driver who happened to get caught up in this. I've got nothing to gain by lying. Lena met his eyes. But if he does believe me, you get to walk away from this as the person who helped stop a war instead of starting one. Redemption instead of execution. Lu Chen studied her for a long moment, then laughed, a short, sharp bark of genuine amusement. You've got nerve, I'll give you that. He lowered his weapon completely. Fine. Make your play. But if this goes wrong, I'll remember who suggested it. Fair enough, Lena said. The Triad soldiers were already withdrawing, melting back through exits that Lena hadn't even noticed. Lu Chen paused at the doorway. Tell Lu Wei his underboss was too ambitious for his own good. He'll understand. Then they were gone, and it was just Jun Seo and Lena and the approaching sirens and a warehouse full of evidence of a conspiracy that officially never existed. That was the most reckless, insane, brilliant thing I've ever seen, Jun Seo said quietly. I learned from the best, Lena replied. His hand found hers, and they stood together as the first police vehicle screeched to a halt outside, knowing that the real work was about to begin. The restaurant Lu Wei chose for the meeting was the kind of place Lena had delivered to countless times but never entered: white tablecloths, private rooms, the sort of establishment where real business happened behind closed doors. She sat between two men who'd ordered deaths with less thought than they gave to dinner selections, and tried to remember that she'd chosen this. Lu Wei was older than she'd expected, with silver hair and the calm demeanor of someone who'd survived decades in a profession that didn't forgive mistakes. Jun Seo sat across from him, expression neutral, but Lena could read the tension in his shoulders. Ms. Walker. Lu Wei's attention focused on her with unsettling intensity. You've made quite the impression. My people tell me you broadcast our private business to half the city. Your underboss was going to kill me. I got creative. A slight smile touched his mouth. Indeed. Now you wish to tell me that Lu Chen was acting without my knowledge or approval. Lena spread the documents across the table: financial records, communication logs, testimony from Min's associates that Jiwoo's people had extracted after the warehouse incident. Min Taeyong approached Lu Chen 6 months ago. They planned the whole thing together: kill Jun Seo, blame your organization, start a war that would destroy the peace treaty. Min wanted to take over with a more traditional approach. Lu Chen wanted your position and thought a successful war would prove his worth. And you expect me to believe my own underboss would betray me so thoroughly? I expect you to look at the evidence and decide for yourself. Lena kept her voice steady. But consider this: if they'd succeeded, your organization would be at war right now. Operations disrupted, police attention intensified, legitimate business partners fleeing. Would that benefit you? Or would it benefit someone ambitious enough to want your position? Lu Wei studied the documents in silence. The room felt airless, the weight of potential violence hanging unspoken. Finally, he looked up at Jun Seo. You knew Min Taeyong since childhood. I did, Jun Seo acknowledged. Which is why I didn't see it until too late. And now you come to me with proof of conspiracy, expecting what? Forgiveness? Partnership? I'm expecting you to recognize that someone manipulated both of us toward a war neither of us wanted. The peace treaty was always about reducing violence and police attention so we could focus on legitimate business. That hasn't changed. If anything, this proves why it's necessary. Lena pulled out another folder. Here's what peace would actually look like in numbers. The businesses that could thrive without protection overhead. The police resources that would shift away if violence decreased. The legitimate partnerships that become possible when you're not managing daily territorial conflicts. She'd spent 3 days assembling this with help from people in both organizations who were tired of violence. You're both losing money on the current system. Peace isn't weakness, it's profit. Lu Wei leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. The silence stretched until Lena's nerves screamed. You speak well for someone who was delivering soup 2 weeks ago, he said finally. Perhaps too well. How do I know this isn't simply another manipulation? Because I have nothing to gain, Lena said. I'm not part of any organization. I don't benefit from peace or war except that peace means my brother stays safe and the neighborhood I've worked in for 7 years stops being a battlefield. I'm exactly what I appear to be, someone who got dragged into this accidentally and is trying to survive by making it better. Another endless pause. Then Lu Wei stood, and Lena's heart stopped. But he walked to the window, looking out over the city lights, and when he spoke his voice was thoughtful. My grandfather came to this city with nothing. Built an organization that protected our community when no one else would. But protection became control, control became violence, and somewhere along the way we forgot who we were protecting. He turned to face them. Perhaps it's time to remember. The treaty they signed that night was complex, full of conditions and verification requirements and graduated trust-building measures. But it held. Over the following weeks, violence dropped dramatically. Police attention shifted away. Businesses that had been struggling began to recover. Jun Seo restructured his organization, promoting younger members who'd grown up in a different world and wanted different things. He pushed harder toward legitimacy, real estate development, import-export businesses that actually imported and exported legal goods, community investment that built rather than exploited. He offered Lena her freedom again, the new identity, the clean break, the chance to reclaim her invisible life. She refused again. I've spent my whole life being invisible, she told him in his penthouse office as dawn broke over the city. Pretending I didn't see what was happening, staying small and safe and insignificant. I'm done with that. What do you want instead? A job. She held his gaze. I understand this world now, not just the violence, but the people trying to live in it. The community that needs protection but also needs opportunity. I can help with that. Legitimate community development, liaison work with the businesses trying to transition. I'm good at being invisible when I need to be, but I'm also good at talking to people, understanding what they need. It's still dangerous. There are still people who want the old ways back. Everything is dangerous, Lena said. The difference is whether you're doing something that matters. They drove through the city at dawn, past the restaurants opening for breakfast service, the families starting their day, the ordinary people living ordinary lives in spaces that were slowly becoming safer. Danny was graduating in 3 months, still completely unaware of how close he'd come to disaster. Lena would keep that secret, some forms of invisibility were still worth maintaining. Do you ever regret it? Jun Seo asked quietly. Saving me that night? Lena thought about the fear, the violence, the way her life had been torn apart and rebuilt into something she never imagined. She thought about the people who were alive because a war hadn't happened, the businesses that were recovering, the slow transformation of a community from battlefield to home. No, she said. For the first time in my life, I don't regret being seen. The city spread before them, full of challenge and danger and possibility. Peace was fragile, there would be people who tested it, who profited from its failure, who remembered the old ways with nostalgia rather than horror. The work wasn't finished. Maybe it never would be. But for now, as dawn light touched the buildings and the city woke to another day of not quite peace, Lena Walker sat beside Kong Jun Seo and knew exactly where she was meant to be. The delivery girl who saved the Mafia boss had become something neither of them expected, a bridge between worlds, a voice for the voiceless, someone who chose to be seen because invisibility was no longer enough. The city wasn't ready for what followed. But ready or not, change had come.